This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome, everybody. You're now being recorded, so don't say anything that you don't want to have everybody else hear. So, and hopefully you'll mute yourself and participate in this, because I think this is an important topic, and one that I know fairly well, but I'm not certainly an expert in any of this. But the topic for today is actually cyber insurance, actually the renewal process and how it is, as far as I can tell, relatively drastically changed in a good way for us. And the other objectives is just kind of go, what are the changes? Why are they important? Then what is it that we're hearing from our clients? And then how can we use this as a platform or a wedge to be able to have deeper conversations about cybersecurity and have people buy our security stack in a way that they were less inclined to do previously. So the bottom line is what I'm hearing, and we'll hear from the group here shortly, but what I'm hearing across the industry is that cyber insurance is much more difficult to get these days in the process, and the underwriting, the application process and the underwriting process has become much more stringent. And Mike and Jose and his team is there, and I believe Travelers is headquartered towards you guys, isn't it? Travelers Insurance, who is one of the biggest underwriters in the country. And they got, what I found about insurance companies is when an unexpected risk explodes and they didn't plan for it, they kind of overreact in the next year. And that's exactly what happens to all the cyber insurance companies this year, is that they themselves underestimated the amount and the extent of the threat and the amount of the money that they had to pay out. And therefore, they're actually taking it much more seriously now than they did in the past. Not that they didn't take it in the past, but they seem to be putting some teeth behind their underwriting process now. And so what we found in the industry, which may be true hopefully in your client base, is also they're actually limiting the amount of cyber insurance a client can get now to $2 million, in some cases $3 million. So even the amount you can get is being restricted in a sense, and the hoops you have to jump through, or the statements you have to comply with in the application, have become much more extensive. It's gone from like a 2 or 3 play application in some cases to like 5 to 8. So the one thing that I'm hearing, and we want to talk a little bit about, is this gives us a good opportunity, because it's basically a third party reinforcing all the stuff we're telling our clients about security that they should be doing, and a third party is now kind of weighing in and making them take it more seriously. Fancy word for that in the whole consulting world is a wedge event. It's something, it's allowing you to have conversations and have it in a way that that'll be much more serious potentially than they used to be in the past, because of all of the emphasis that insurance companies and brokers are putting on this. So a lot of I think a lot of us have had conversations with our clients about security in the past, and I think a big point we need to make to them, and that they seem to be appreciating, we'll get into, if Russell joins us, he'll get into his experience. But it also seems like clients are understanding that these times are different now. Like what used to be a relatively vague threat is, with some degree of certainty, is going to potentially hit them at some point in their business. It's kind of the mindset or the psychology is kind of shifting in that way. And the other thing that's worth kind of talking a little bit about too is whether it's any kind of security, for any kind of framework actually, but a security framework, whether it's NIST, CMMC, or anything, when a client kind of self-assesses their compliance, they always rate themselves as much higher up than they are. So you'll see people, like a good example that I'm familiar with, and it applies here too, is NIST is this kind of security standard for the military or the defense contractors, and it's a self-assessment. And if you're NIST compliant, you're got about 70% of the way to becoming CMMC client, which requires a third party to come and certify your security procedures, right? And what they found was when people went through that process, only 30% of the people who thought they were ready were anywhere near ready. I think what I've seen in a couple of webinars talking about cyber insurance, where if people would rate themselves on a scale of 10, being like 10, they got everything nailed. If people rate themselves as a 7, and you actually go through and do a security review of what they're offering, they're really about a 2, right? So there's two things about clients. Clients kind of believe that they're overconfident in their compliance, but also if they don't complete the application correctly, right? And it turns out that they have an event and they didn't really accurately apply correctly, that means that they won't get any kind of coverage from the insurance company. So they're actually at risk if they have an event, if they didn't fill it out correctly, that their business could go under, right? So I'm going to talk to Russell here in a second if he shows up, but what I understand is different, right? It's much more stringent about what you have in place to protect yourself against cyber intrusions, right? And I think the easiest way to say it is, before they used to ask pretty much, do you got firewalls? What do you got in place? Okay, that's cool, right? But now they're actually moving to the fact that you can detect and protect yourself from incidents, right? So if you look at an application, what they'll go through is, what kind of sensitive data do you have? Right, so it has all the stuff like, obviously credit cards, personal information, bank information, blah, blah, blah. They want to know what you have and what your exposure is. They also actually, honestly, about intellectual property, or intellectual capital you have from any third parties, right? So they actually, they're much more stringent about what you specifically have in place that needs to be protected. They actually go through a whole section, for example, on, when employees quit, do you take their, passwords away? What's basically all your systems administration stuff behind employees, joining and leaving your company? They ask if you have detection and response tools now. They'll ask about backup and recovery, and they'll ask about business disaster recovery and incident response plans. So even though there's like more stringent things here, there's also a bigger risk of I would say there's more teeth in it, I guess, right? They actually care that you have this stuff now. And the underwriting process is actually going to go through and make sure some of these things are true, right? So let me pause there, and I just wanted to please engage as much as you can to people that have been going out. And how many people have been having these kinds of conversations with clients? All right. Okay, let's start with Jose. What have you experienced, and how is it similar or different than it was previous years?
So, I mean, I'm just noticing it's a lot more now. Like a lot more customers are are being approached not just by Numa, but by their service provider, but also by their cyber insurance company or whoever is doing their insurance. I've also noticed that there's more detailed questions, like you mentioned. It's not just like, do you have a firewall? Now they're asking questions like, do you have MFA? What type of technologies are you using for your backups? So they're asking a lot more specific technical questions.
Yeah, that was my impression too. And it's also, what I thought was interesting is the questions they asked about what you had pretty well line up with what would be your security stack anyway, right? So it's not actually, so it's good news for us. And let me ask you, Jose, so it's happening do you have many of your clients asking you to help fill out the form or think about what the answers are? Yeah, that's the other thing I'm fishing for too, is that I think people also want our help in understanding if they are compliant or not compliant. And have you had, and we'll go through Russell here in a second, but have you had that then easily transition to the kinds of talking a little bit about more of them taking on your security stack if they don't have it already?
Yeah, it does make that conversation easier, just because a lot of times these services aren't just like a capital X. It's not just like a one-time cost, right? A lot of times it's both CapEx and OpEx. Whether it's for licensing or it's for like actual services that are needed on a monthly basis. So it helps make that conversation go a lot bit easier if it's like, hey, you can save money on your cyber insurance, or you can make sure that you qualify for your cyber insurance if you
Yeah.
move forward with these things.
I think the cool thing to me is that it actually legitimizes cyber security as a business risk at a higher level, right? I think it wakes people up to the fact that this isn't just something that your MSP is trying to force on you. It's something that is actually now almost like a cost of doing business, or it's something that your insurance company wants to make sure that your capabilities are in place so that, you know, everybody's risk is reduced, right? The insurance company is reduced, the client is reduced, the MSP is reduced. So it just seems to me like a healthy development. And let me see, where's Russell at? So Russell, why don't you kind of go?
I'm here somewhere.
Yeah, so why don't you go through? Yeah, you're further down my list, my friend, so I apologize. Do you agree with most of the stuff that's on that page, and what's been your experience? And maybe give us an example or two of the cyber conversations we've been having.
Absolutely. We've seen a dramatic change, I would say, in the last 2 months. I think we're seeing the impacts of the really horrendous year in cybersecurity that we've had, and particularly the big data breaches for Kaseya, the Microsoft print nightmare, et cetera. And so that seems to have really woken up the insurance carriers in a way we hadn't seen before. And I'm sure it's stuff they've been working on for a while. They've all seemed to be deciding to move. So as people are coming up for renewal, we're getting exactly like you guys were talking about. We're being, you know, called up by clients saying, hey, we've been sent this IT questionnaire or cybersecurity questionnaire to fill out. Can you help us fill it out? And, you know, we're happy to do so. We look at it for them, and a lot of times we say, you know, we can't attest to this portion of it because they're not yet doing MFA on, in terms of remote access, or in terms of your emails, or you're not doing cybersecurity training. And in these cases, luckily, the thing is we've already talked with them about these things and kind of presented them with that plan maybe at the last QBR or in conversation. So it's stuff that we've already been queuing up in their minds. But now they have this external factor coming. I can share a couple of the kinds of things we've been seeing with folks here.
What do you need to share? Do you want to share your screen, my friend?
Yeah, if you don't mind a second.
No, I just got to give it to you. I was wondering, Russell, though, because I'm not the most technical person in the world, is it true that one of the requirements is incident detection and reporting?
I'm sorry, what was that, Mike? Can you repeat that?
Are they requiring incident detection and response as a capability?
I have not. What I am hearing, so it's been interesting. I also say this is really good for kind of marketing and building alliances, because we've started talking with we've talked with insurance brokers that our clients use, and that's been very useful. And starting to build out some of those networks, and we're actually talking with one right now about doing some joint webinars together.
Oh, here we go.
Let me see if I can get some of this away out of here. I'll move it to the side anyway. So yeah, we're looking at this as an opportunity to build connections, and I'm very excited about that. Here. So here's an example of the kind of thing we're being sent. This happens to be Travelers. But this is a legal document the clients are being asked to sign. In this case, they need to attest that they've implemented multi-factor authentication, not just for the email platform, which we've seen before, but now they're wanting it for remote access, administrative access, and remote access to email. And basically, there's a little checkbox questionnaire here, and the client has to fill that out and sign it. If they're found to not be doing these things, that's what they're in breach of their insurance coverage, and they won't get anything, or they'll get a very reduced amount.
Is this an actual addendum to the full policy, or is this a whole separate thing they have to sign as a legal document?
This seems to be something that they're sending over, but they are requiring our clients to sign it. So in this particular case,
interesting.
We had to ask. What I have seen, and please feel free to do this, we've been 100% successful here. You know, we've had big clients that may have 100 people, and they're like, hey, we need to have MFA everywhere on everything, or you lose your insurance coverage in the next 15 days. We've been able to ask for extensions in every case successfully and say that, hey, we're in the process of implementing this. Can you give us 30 days or 60 days? They've been happy to do so. Yeah, this is an actual form, and the client does have to legally sign it. And again, if they're in breach of anything, they either lose their full coverage or at least will only get partial coverage.
So can I ask you a question, Russell?
Yeah.
Have you reached out to your clients and offered? So you got clients coming to you and say, we got to fill it out. Do you see it as an opportunity to go to them before they have?
We do. We actually, we've seen enough of a change, and then I got on the line with, well, I was on a call with a IT person from Travelers for this particular client, and we had a little talk about it. And the nice thing is he loved our security stack and checked all of his boxes, which was gratifying to hear. But we did talk about a few things coming down the pipe. So one of the things that we're doing, which isn't on the form, is managed detection and response. We're using Blackpoint as our primary, but having that MDR tool, which is looking at the workstations and emails. He said that's not a requirement yet, but what he's hearing internally at Travelers is it will be a requirement as soon as next year. So, you know, there's nothing official, but I thought that was very interesting. So from his perspective, he was happy to see their client getting on the bandwagon sooner.
And then how did, so they ask you to fill this out, and then how does that, do you then have a more expansive conversation than just multi-factor authorization with the client?
We do.
Okay.
So at this point, you know, we kind of use this as a catalyst, and we're getting a bunch of these right now. We just had another come in on Friday where, right, somebody's being asked to do this. What do we do? So we go back to them and say, okay, you know, as nice as it is, I've still got my PowerPoint up here. You know, as nice as it is, MFA is just, it's another form of perimeter security. It's designed to keep people out. It's not going to help you if somebody gets in. So, you know, I'm sharing on the presentation, but, you know, we tie this into, you know, we're moving to the next level. We're moving to MDR, we're moving to detection tools, and this is a component of it. You have to have good perimeter security, but you have to back it up. And we love bringing in, these are slides we got from Blackpoint. We love bringing in, you know, this one, it's 193 days for an average company to detect that they've had a breach. So your MFA isn't going to help that. You've got to back it up with other tools in your security stack. So we're making it a whole conversation. And I like my colleague Mike Sheila said today, because I have had a client come in and say, well, you know, I just want to check the boxes. You know, I don't want the whole stack. I don't think I need the whole stack. I do need this. And I like what Mike Sheila said, which is probably a little tougher than I normally am, which was like go to the client and say, Brad, you know, as long as I've known you, you're not a check the boxes guy. You're a do what's right guy. And, you know, my job doing what's right is to recommend the full stack, because MFA isn't going to protect you completely. And you need everything. You need all the layers of the onion. And so kind of coming back and saying, you know, this is not a check the box thing. This is a recommendation, because so many companies have been hit. So many companies have lost, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The insurance companies have had to pay out so much. This is not about checking boxes. This is about being secure. And so this is a piece of the puzzle, but we want to fill in the rest.
So tell me about
I mixed a lot of metaphors there. Apologies.
Yeah, no, I know. So tell me about, you talked about this one client. Tell me another client who's a situation where where the cyber insurance discussion led you to have the broader discussion, right? So one person got this thing and said you had to fill it out, and then Mike said you want to go beyond that. Have you been able to transition a lot of several more conversations from the cyber insurance?
Yeah, we actually preemptively, we were seeing enough of these that we actually put a MailChimp out there with, this is what we're seeing. This is a change in the industry, and come talk to us about it. We got several clients respond to that email actually and want to set up security meetings. So we've been, in general, setting up security meetings with all of our managed clients. Very interesting too, because we've had clients that were, sort of marginal on the cusp. They've been a client for years, and it was an old plan, and they're not doing much and not paying much, and never have been interested in kind of moving up a level until this happened, until this was available. And so now they can kind of see more of the value of working with us. And so, we've had clients that went from, tripled their MRR because of where they wanted to be in the security stack, which was really cool. So this is sort of the opening, but hey, let us have a whole discussion. It's like I said, I've got, my PowerPoints and stuff here of, let's protect everything. Let's improve your security because we're seeing these things happening. And we had, in the last week, we've had 2 clients almost get phished. So we do talk about the whole picture. We say, look, it's and in addition to MFA, we've got to be doing cybersecurity training. We've got to be doing MDR. We've got to be doing password managers. We've got to really cover the gamut. And people are more engaged this year, I would say, than I've ever seen. Definitely. And I think the news cycles help in that.
And I think you're actually right, because it's July. Yeah. So like I've seen much more noise and energy and heat around us literally in the last 2 weeks. Right. Where did this Jennifer still? Jennifer Hill. There she is. So
I'd say it.
Go ahead.
The last month or 2, yeah.
So I had to go to, is Jennifer, are you still on? She raised her hand earlier, or how, she's not around. How has anybody else been experiencing the same kind of thing with their clients, where they're coming to you for because they're getting these insurance renewal applications? So we had Jose, we had Russell. Nobody else is seeing this or not seeing this?
Oh, yeah.
Well? Okay. Greg, why don't you tell us what you're seeing?
Yeah, similar to the others, it's ramping up seemingly more and more, getting these kind of questionnaires. They're kind of different every time they come through, but it's seemingly evolving month to month as to what those questionnaires look like. But
Agreed.
Can't add too much more than what Russell's kind of mentioned, is a holistic approach of, getting past that front gate and then what happens after that. So we're also putting pieces in place to, if they do get past that front door, what's that look like? But we're still working on, fine tuning it as time goes and as products kind of release. So that's where we're at.
I do have a great story, Mike, because one of our clients that we've done very little with for years, big company, and Keith and I went out. Keith was our president, for those who don't know. Went out to meet with them, and Keith was starting off with like, okay, Russell, so we're going to go over our strategy. We need to start off mentioning that this is going to cost a lot more than they're paying. And I was, absolutely not. And we did everything right. Yeah, I said, no, we are going to talk. We're going to introduce what we see happening in security in the last year. We're going to move on to see where we see the threats are. We're going to move on to the problems of traditional perimeter security and where it lets you down as zero-day vulnerabilities and end users. And then we're going to discuss how we solve those problems. And in the last 10 minutes, we talked about the price. And all credit to Mike Cummings and the rest of you helping us out, because at that point, the response we got back from the owner of the company was, wait, you mean we get all of those things in your stack for that price? And that was great. So,
Right.
but I was so happy that Keith was a good owner, and he said, "I'm going to shut up and let you drive this."
Yeah.
And we did not spend the first 20 minutes talking about why it was so expensive because of that.
So I think the thing I was trying to I'll talk to the owners about this too is I'm not sure I would just help them fill out the form and send it back. I think I would suggest we look at it as an opportunity to have the kind of conversations that you need to have with clients about what it means to what that beyond just getting your insurance. What it means is that you're facing the reason Travelers is doing this has become a much more serious business risk for companies like you, right? And some percentage of clients will just click it off and fill it in. But what I'm hoping for is that it creates an opportunity for us to have a much broader and a much more kind of business conversation about why this is relevant now, right? Who else? I know that Al, are you on? Where's Al? Al, could you talk about your experience about filling out those forms and how it's helped you have different conversations with your clients?
Yeah, sure. So, matter of fact, we actually get the travelers forms quite often, so I'm very familiar with them. And it's actually interesting, Michael, because you mentioned how typically when clients like to fill them out, they're checking off a lot of boxes that really they should be saying no to.
That's the point I was hoping somebody bring up.
Yeah, so I've been using it as like you said, just an opportunity just to introduce just more of the security stack to them and say, look, guys, they're not exactly asking for it now. They're not mandating it now. So guys, we gotta, at some point it's going to be coming and they're going to be forcing your hand because all this is risk related. And you see this, no. They're going to see all these no's and they're going to jack your rates up. So let's talk about that. And it's definitely created a lot more opportunity. I know that over here at Tech Solutions, we are beefing up our recommendations, and a lot of it is actually being influenced by the insurance carriers as well. So we're beefing things up, and we're even coming up with our bare minimum requirement just to be a client of ours now. Like we're having that discussion internally. So that's
in terms of what they have to adopt on the security.
Exactly. I mean, because we're definitely full force into cybersecurity now, and if you as a client, you don't want to be in alignment with our best practices pertaining to security, then chances are you're not going to be a good fit for us, and we go our separate ways.
Yeah, so I think that's the main thing I wanted to. Actually, let me grab my slides here for a second. Ooh, screen. So here's what's happening among the best practices in the industry, right? And this is what I'll be talking to the STP owners about. So it's the next slide, buddy. This one. So what we're starting to see and what's being advocated throughout the industry, and what I'm going to work with whoever's interested in doing this, is basically our suggestion is going to be that we be more proactive rather than waiting for people to come to us with these applications and all that stuff. Is going to recommend that we proactively go out and offer to review and assess their business risk for their cyber insurance policy. It sounds like we're being a little bit forward, but we just want to know what cycle our clients are going to be on this, and with some people, like we said, they're going to ask us to help them fill it out, and we need to know what we offer fulfills those requirements. But what some other people are doing is another thing is that some people, and I don't know if anybody with an STP is doing this, but what somebody will do is actually walk through kind of what kind of expenses or costs are you going to incur if you have a breach. And what that does is it actually says, you know, you get $2 million of insurance, but that could be all absorbed by some pretty basic things like paying ransomware, right? And there's these other costs that are going to potentially exceed $2 million, which we got to be cognizant of. The only reason to think about doing this kind of exercise or talking about this with your clients is that then it provides an incentive or a catalyst for them to consider even a bigger, making this even a bigger priority for their business too. Some companies even actually do ransomware simulations, like how would your business be affected if you got shut down on Monday this week, right? What would that look like? And so we're not quite sure how we're going to do this yet with an STP, but this is actually what we're going to start working towards, where you could actually have kind of a business case type meeting with your clients to talk through what's the real implication of this on a business like yours, right? Let me ask one last question before. How do I stop sharing? I wanted to get one or more people too, like, what is Hank? Hank, or I think Audrey, you would raise your hand where you've had these kind of conversations too. What have yours felt like?
Mine were not I'm sorry. Mine were not necessarily from the insurance companies. They were from clients who were trying to bring on another account, or someone was looking to hire them. But before they would commit to working with them, they wanted to know that, you know, their environment was secure. And there were a lot of no's. And so I'm not sure if they got the business or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about you, Hank? What are you hearing from medical practices?
Yeah, mainly the same thing, Michael. You know, it's funny, like the conversation has changed. You know, we've really gone into like assumed breach mode. So it's kind of like, well, how can we soften the blow? You know, it's really to that point. Sadly, that's just the conversation now. It's like, well, what are we going to do if you want to pay the ransom, great. It's going to be a lot more than that, though. You're going to be down, your business, you're going to, you know, so like, what do you want to do? You know, and luckily we got out in front of it back in January, and we've been having the conversations. And so now it's like really reinforcing, like there's always that handful of people that just haven't really bought in. So this is just good fuel for that fire.
It's kind of interesting, because if you think about it, I was just actually thinking, like, if a medical practice, it's funny, a friend of mine actually went to a orthopedic place up here, and he went in, the guys just happened to say, you know, yeah, we haven't been able to get, yeah, our systems are a little bit down, we haven't been able to get in. And the guy happened to own an MSP, and he told him, he goes, hey, don't quote me 100%, but I guarantee you got ransomed, where you got hacked. And it turned down that this pretty big orthopedic place lost $250,000 or something like that just in revenue in a day. So it's like this is not an insignificant thing for people. So I've been told they're setting up Joe, that he's going to have a really good story for us. So we'll introduce Joe and hear his great story. Come on.
So apparently Al set me up. I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out, but so we had a law firm. We have a law firm client. They're in their eyes, they're small. There's 12 people. I don't know, 4 or 5 partners, some associates, some support staff. They have a relationship with a client of theirs, right? Is a big insurance company. So AIG is their client, but AIG as an insurer obviously has many of these things front and center in place. So the context here was a vendor control assessment program where AIG is auditing their vendors. So the law firm is their vendor. So the standard questionnaire plus, and for the first time, I think in a while, we actually got a response to the initial questionnaire where they said, we're going to hold you to these, and it was like 6 points that you need to change to be in our good, you know, to be in our good graces. They didn't quite say they were going to fire them if they didn't, but that was the implication. And some of those were things that we didn't we at Tech Solutions as MSP branching into cyber aren't rock solid on, right? One of them, well, there's kind of two divisions there. One set of them is policy documentation, right? Having written cybersecurity policies in place that say, they're like the HR policies. They are broad business level documents that outline processes and procedures, right?
Mm-hmm.
So broad. We've got very little experience drafting those for clients. To me, those are legal documents almost, right? So AIG recommended a third-party consultant, right? An outside vendor whose expertise is cybersecurity. We all met the vendor, the outside cybersecurity consultant, who's in the business of all of this, both the policy documents and the controls, offered to write the policy documents, to implement their own vendor control program for our client. And we started turning up the cybersecurity solutions to the point where a continuous ongoing vulnerability assessment is one of them that we're fast tracking, rapidly deploying that, something that's running all the time, looking for vulnerabilities, creating reports, reviewing them regularly, working them into the QBRs, and of course the SIM and the SOC integration, like on the other side of things, along with standard stuff like MFA on some of their admin accounts. So again, just a very new stance from them. It's an insurer. It's a little different relationship, but they're previously in the past when checking the boxes might have gotten it done. They came back with us and said, okay, prove it.
So you are doing this, Joe. So in that case, AIG is a client of the law firm?
So in this case, yes, AIG is the client of the law firm.
Okay, so they're not providing them cyber insurance. So then therefore what they're doing, it's kind of like CMMC or something. They're saying, if we're going to use you as a law firm, you got to meet certain supplier requirements.
Yeah, they call it the vendor control VQACL. I forget what it stands for.
And this was the first year. Was this the first year they had to comply? Is it the first year that they were in this program, or is it the first year that cybersecurity was such an important part of it?
So I believe it is a relatively new relationship with the client.
Okay.
And it, I'd have to look at my notes and see if that individual client had come up before. Yeah. But again, this is a law firm. This is a law firm that thinks that they're small potatoes and they don't need to conform to all these highfalutin cybersecurity practices, when of course we all know that that's
they're a prime target.
Yeah. So it's just been a challenge, and they're moving along. They're taking some of our recommendations. They're going to work with this consultant and hopefully draft up some good documents that are going to outline the need for the controls that we're rapidly implementing. Yes, that's the story. The story that Al was talking about. So it looks like Russell.
I guess we've also wrestled with. So I'm so glad you brought up the policy writing, Joe, because it's like we can handle all the techie stuff.
Yeah.
But when it came to this, nobody has any experience doing this, and we've been fumbling around ourselves. It's actually something. I'll keep everybody in the loop. It's becoming enough of our business that we're actually thinking about maybe adding a position to do this at some point in the next year. It wouldn't surprise me.
Position to do the policy stuff?
Yeah.
As
part of that service. But right now we're using a mix of Compliance Forge, and we've got a partner agreement with them, and they have things like CMMC policy templates, HIPAA policy templates, and then we also have engaged, just like Joe did, a partner in Chicago, actually, Nick Espinosa, who helps us with some of the compliance paperwork and testing. So yeah, we had to go outside for that too. So it was good to hear about your experience, Joe. Thank you.
So I think like I said, the last question I had was, does anybody have any recommendations for any training on this stuff or any webinars they've seen that have been good? Put them in the chat box. I actually went to one from Gary Peak about a week ago that wasn't bad. And I was just curious if anybody has any other kind of training and resource stuff, just put it in the chat box. That would make sense. But I think what I'd like to encourage us to do as a group is to think about the insurance, cyber insurance requirements as an opportunity, and figure out how we use that, kind of proactively seek that out with our clients to figure out ways that we can actually not convince them, but have a serious discussion about what they need to adopt from us, basically, right? I just think this is the first thing I've seen that's actually made me optimistic that people are going to buy security. And it's the first time I've heard people taking it much more seriously. I don't know if it's because of the cyber insurance or it's because of the cybersecurity insurance companies just endorsing the fact that this is important enough that they have to go through something serious, right? Something more stringent than they've done in the past, that is much more serious, and they see it as a serious business risk. I'm just curious whether it seems to me that it's just leading to much more fruitful and serious conversations around security. So I forget who said it. I think it was Winston Churchill says you should never waste a crisis. So this looks like a good one for us to take advantage of. And I know at least one person here is on the new business development side, and I just want to say it's an equal opportunity for you to go out and get new clients too. Because if you can have a cyber insurance conversation with somebody who has an MSP, and that MSP is not talking about it, it's actually a great opportunity for you to secure that client as well. I think it's happened with I don't know if that's happened with you guys yet, Russell, but I know that's an outreach program that Mike Sheila's putting in place, I believe.
Yeah, and just like Al was talking about, we're not signing people up right now unless they're on one of our security stacks.
Yeah, like they
I'd
can't
say
become a
within the
new
last
client.
couple of months. You know, the non-security plans, those are existing clients, but we're not adding any new folks without it. We're actually looking at probably this fall or this winter, working with our lawyer to draft a agreement to any existing clients that don't want to change their plans. Basically saying that you've been informed about the new security stack and recommendations, and you've chosen to decline them, and you know we're not responsible if you have a breach because of that. So that's how seriously we're looking at this stuff.
Awesome. Okay, so before we wrap up here, I just wanted to talk about three things really quickly. One is what I'm looking to do is get some more input and some more participation about kind of content and what we should do in these sessions, what we should do in addition to these sessions. So if anybody's so inclined to help me think through that, please let me know and volunteer. I already got Rich Kinney, and I think Luke Downing is going to be part of that. But I'd like if anybody from the CAM side wants to do that, please let me know and just send me an email. And what I really want to do is figure out like what content would be, what training and content would be most useful for you guys, as well as what might be things that we do outside of this. I'm going to talk to the owners to see what we were planning to have. For those of you that have been in the SDP roundup, we were thinking about doing that again in October. I just got to confer with the owners to see if that's going to be on-site or digital or whatever, given what's it called, new variant kind of stuff happening. So I'll see what the current mood is for everybody, and next week or so, see if we're going to do that live here in Chicago or Dallas. Anybody else have anything else you want to bring up to the group? I think I saw a comment.
Just real quick, Joe. So for the law firm, were you able to convince them that it's not necessarily them that the hackers were going after, but maybe their client or their client base? Because that's sometimes hard to convey to clients. At least I find sometimes, like they're not necessarily after you, but they're after who you know or what you have.
Sure. So positioning that the data that they have is the value can go a long way. One of my conversation points is that the bad guys, we call them the bad guys. The bad guys are getting better at casting a wider net. So it's not just the big guys anymore. The bad guys are getting better. They're getting more efficient, more effective at targeting smaller fish just as effectively as larger one. But still with the same risk to the client, right? If they can get at their transaction processes, get in those email threads where PII is going through, or even payment information is going through, there's lots of risks there. One of the benefits as a Delaware company, there's been a recent law that the state of Delaware passed requiring disclosure of any kind of breach of X number of Delaware residents. So, just trying to reinforce all of those points is part of the, just part of the conversation process. And it sometimes, sounds like scare tactics, but that's really just the reality of it at this point. What kind of strategies do you use to kind of get them to get in to get in that mindset?
So Joe, another thing too another thing that Joe and I have been using is I've personally taken the word if out of my vocabulary. So just kind of that idea operating under an assumed breach. So not if the bad guys get in, when the bad guys get in, when your network gets compromised. How prepared are you? What's going to happen?
Yeah, you assume the edge is going to fall, right? You assume the edge protections are going to go down, right?
Well, and I've flat out said to clients, I'm like, look, we cannot protect you against 0-day vulnerabilities. That is the nature of what they are. And we've seen several major ones. We cannot help you with that. You have to be doing these other things so we can see if something happens. But I don't know. I think it's an easy conversation with most of the people we've been talking with. They're very happy. We've been reaching out to them. They want to talk about it. It's been in the news so much. They're worried about it. I don't know, Phil, I don't know if I've had anybody turn down a security, to my knowledge. I don't think, yeah, Phil has it either. So it's easy to have these conversations. And again, we don't want to scare people. So, we go through, this is the way the world is. It's scary enough. You don't need to elaborate on it. But then we go over, here's how we can help you. And here's the solution. And yeah, the reaction's been pretty overwhelming. Awesome. Yeah, Mike, I will keep you posted on how that waiver goes.
I appreciate that, Russell.
So help me out a little bit with that. Is that a contract, or are you asking him to sign like a waiver? Because I
think it would be a waiver, but we would be asking our lawyer to help us prepare it. We want it to be very clear that they have turned down a security recommendation.
Yeah.
If they don't want to sign it, we will part ways with them.
So I guess that's the meat of my question, because our company is trying to beef up our MSA, right? Our contract language for the good clients, along with some of our other products. I know it's nice to cover your behind, right? The CYA clause, right? But I also don't want to imply that someone electing to not sign the waiver and taking our security programs now puts them in like an invincible position where we are responsible for their security.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. That's why we're having the lawyer help us with
get the lawyer involved, right?
No, that's a good point.
So I don't know. it's nice to have in writing from the client when they decline one of our recommendations, but I don't know how far that stands up legally. It certainly lets me focus my attention on other clients that are more receptive to solutions, but.
Well, I know Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel, I know ours is the other owners I've talked with recently, everybody in TVG is getting worried about MSPs being sued because clients have data breaches. So I think this fear is starting to build with the owners that this is something that people are worried about and could be happening. Because
I think what I believe actually, what I personally believe, I think facts bear it out, is actually I don't think you can be an MSP unless people take your full security stack at some point. Because first of all, you wouldn't be providing the adequate value to their business, right? I don't know, that might be a minority of one, but I actually think cybersecurity risk is real. Actually, I've seen companies as small as like a title insurance company and a dry cleaner get targeted and wiped out by cyber. So I think almost in a professional sense, I think people need it. But I also think from a business model sense, is I won't tell stories out of school, but it's asking one MSP this recently about, you're increasing your security stack to your clients and you're charging X dollars more. Like how much of that is profit? And the answer was 0, right? Because it's just, in a sense, you just have to have that in order to be a viable MSP these days. So I think what's happening from your guys' side too is it's just, I think at some level, your owners are the side, but at some level, everybody's got to have at least an adequate level of security so that you can continue to serve them as a client.
Well, I guess we looked at it as, we've protected networks, we've protected firewalls, we've put in backups in case the building burns down. This really isn't any different than protecting the client's network and data. It's different types of threats and we need different kinds of tools, but it's what we've been doing for years. And the same way you would feel very uncomfortable if you had a client without an offsite backup, you should feel very uncomfortable if you have a client without these security tools. And I think that's what we're getting to.
Yeah, and I think that's just the way of the world, actually. I think and what's interesting is the cyber insurance, the way they're actually taking it more seriously, I think is our best buddy in this whole thing, right? Is they used to work for the largest insurance broker in the whole world, and I just know that insurance companies don't mess around. They're in the business to make a huge amount. I used to work for a company that would insure oil rigs in Dubai, and what I've learned from that expertise is insurance companies don't ever lose money. Right? And so if it's this significant and they're taking this serious, in my opinion, would be this is only the first step up. Because I think by next year they'll probably require all of their clients to basically buy everything that's in your stack. Unless a miracle happens. Right? All right, we're wrapping up in the hour. So please, again, I'm looking for some volunteer and support to think through what kinds of topics would be useful for you. If there's things that you'd want to have in place that are not in place yet for you, and think about should we have additional sessions, different kind of sessions, and all those kinds of things going forward. So I appreciate any kind of input you guys have on that, and I'll be working with the owners to have that same conversation. But I appreciate you all showing up and participating, and we're going to end the meeting a minute early, if that's all right.
Mike, I had a question run by people if we're interested. Okay. I get a lot of, I love going to Chicago and so excited about that. But I feel like when I talk with all y'all, I'm usually picking up, a point to make in my next presentation or something that I can do a little better, an additional idea I haven't thought of. And so I was wondering, maybe it's a separate track or separate meeting, what do people think about a chance to kind of give presentations that we're working on to this group and get some feedback on it? And I thought that might be useful to me. I wasn't sure if it was to anybody else.
Sounds good to me. What's everybody else's reaction? Thumbs up, thumbs down, either way? All right, we got thumbs up.
There you go.
Okay, we'll think about that one, Russell.
We got the nod from Jose. I'll take the nod.
Jose, that's the equivalent of a thumbs up from a Kelly.
It is.
He's got to go like rock on, whatever the rock on sign is.
By the way, Greg, Phil and I love your office. It looks very slick and professional. It's very cool.
I get that a lot. Thank you.
Very nice.
It is nice, actually. Is that your home, or is that a joke, or was
No, I was being serious. It looks really techy and stuff.
really cool.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to be doing business with you. This is the operations center right here.
People always think it's fake until somebody in the background moves.
I was going to say,
Right.
that's what I thought. I thought it was like somebody washing dishes behind you. Yeah. All right, guys. Let you guys go. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.